What is up, everybody? Aslan Hajivandi, joined by Tom Lang and Ira Schoffel of Warchant.com. This is the original Florida State preseason top 40. It is the Warchant preseason top 40. Won't you hit the thumbs up button, signifying that you like this video, or at least 2/3 of the people on the screen at most of the time during this show? We certainly would appreciate it. Subscribe to Warchant.com. Season's getting really close, everybody. 70-ish days, maybe under 70 days or so. So things are getting exciting. Thanks for being here, gentlemen. We appreciate it. We've been counting things down, obviously, from 40. We'll be doing the top 10 here, 6 to 10. But before we get there, maybe you're just catching up with us. You've been living a busy life, or maybe you've stepped away and lived some life during this offseason. Here's where we've been recently. Let's look at the spots 11 to 20. Some offensive linemen there sandwiching at the top and the bottom. Robert Scott guys, Bless Harris, maybe de facto left tackles somewhere in that mix there. So that's what we got going on there. Again, all these picks are composite generated from the tabulations of Tom, Ira's picks, Jeff Cameron, Gene Williams, Corey Clark, and myself. So whatever you've heard on the JCS or Wake Up Warchant don't matter because these opinions are all of us combined into one. So with that said, gentlemen, we are now inside the top 10. When we are at this point right now, Tom, I guess just big picture, when you've seen everybody that's here that we're going to unveil, how excited are you for this upcoming season? How completely different does this roster look like than it did 3 years ago, 4 years ago, shoot, even a year ago?
The roster's in a place where you can have a guy at 13 or 15 and he's still a really good football player that you just couldn't get into the hierarchy of how you wanted to build a list. I mean, that's the best way I can say it. When you got to 13 or 15, maybe last year or certainly 2 years ago, it was a coin flip for a guy that wasn't going to start very many places in the ACC. Now, I'd say this roster, Ira, I don't know if you agree, but somewhere between 15 or 20 guys that would pretty much play at every ACC program, start at most every ACC program. So that's the fun of it, is you get into the top 10. It kind of feels like it's an elite of the elite conversation instead of the best of the rest.
Yeah, I would just follow up to say that there's actual star power, I think, now in the top 10 for sure. And on top of that, there's reason for debate. And I think that we're going to be doing some of that in this conversation, because you can make a strong case for a lot of different guys and not necessarily be wrong. If you say that this guy should be in the top 10 and somebody else says that guy should be in the top 10, because there's probably more than 10 players that belong in your top 10. And so it was an interesting, just process and hearing everybody's opinions. And for the most part, I mean, I can argue my opinions, but I see where everybody else is coming from as well.
We're going to maybe pin Ira into a corner and make him explain himself here later on. So tune in. Without further ado, though, here we go. 6 to 10 of the Warchant top 40. I think Ira really sums it up really well, Tom, here, saying star power.
Yeah.
Jeremiah Byers, your offensive lineman, maybe not quote unquote a star, but look at everybody else here. Darrell Jackson, one of the more coveted guys in the portal. We saw what he did in Miami. Patrick Payton, an all ACC performer. Keon Coleman, good grief, just an absolute physical freak, adding to what you already have out wide. And Jaheim Bell, compared to Deebo Samuel, one of the most dynamic athletes in the entire NFL. So, Tom, as you look at those 5 gentlemen on your screen, first off, yes, you can pinch yourself. They are all on Florida State's roster now. It's incredible. Look at us, everybody. Anything catch you by surprise? Anything par for the course, having seen what you saw throughout the spring and what has been unveiled so far?
I think we're on it, guys, as a staff. I think Patrick Payton's rise last year and what we saw in spring, he's going to be in a position to have a lot of production this year. And our top 40 is built on potential impact you can have. Patrick Payton's going to see a lot of single teams. So I think we were correct. Like the 3 of us, for example, had Patrick Payton pretty much where he's at 8. I think we were 7, 8, and 9 in our individual voting. That's a guy that last year would have shocked you if he was in the top 10. But that's a name that stands out to me. The other guys, they're all transfers, 4 of them. So, keep the pattern rolling for Mike Norvell and the program of finding a way to make this roster more top-heavy through the transfer portal.
Ira, when you look at these 5 guys here, I mean, for me, I think it's a skill position guys. But Darrell Jackson, I know people keep talking about the waiver. We are operating under the assumption that everything will go ahead and get processed through. You were the guy that looked at Trey Benson last year in spring, and you're like, I'll take that in all droves I possibly can. Is Darrell Jackson kind of a similar aesthetic sort of checkbox guy that you saw this spring? And what do you think of him being one of the top guys in this list here at a position of great need for Florida State in terms of impact and difference making?
Yeah, and he's one I think some people might be a little surprised by, even though there were glowing reports in the spring. Because, look, I mean, they do have, a lot of guys who played even more football. Obviously, Fabian Lovett, but also Braden Fisk, who transferred him from Western Michigan, is a guy who's played a lot more football than Daryl Jackson. And Daryl Jackson's been well traveled. It's well documented that he started his career at Maryland, then went to Miami, and now is here at Florida State, awaiting that waiver, as you said. But physically, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, like, you just see him and what he can do physically in some of the spring practices. It's kind of jaw dropping. Now, the question is, can Odell Higgins get that out of him every single day and every single Saturday? Because that's really kind of been the question about him throughout his career. And then certainly even in the spring, there were times later in the spring where he didn't quite have the same explosiveness. But yeah, I think it's his money year. I mean, it's his third year of college football. I mean, he still has another year or two of eligibility, but my guess is he's planning to book it onto the NFL after one big year of Florida State. And I just think you can't keep him out of the top 10. I mean, I just think there's college football players that are very good college football players. And then there are players who are also project to be very good NFL players. Daryl Jackson looks like a guy who could be in the NFL for 10 years.
All right, let's kind of recap then. So 10, we got our guy Jeremiah Byers. I just want to ask you both a question real quick. Just one word reply. Tom, Jeremiah Byers, guard or tackle?
Yes. No, we'll go with guard. We'll go with guard.
Ira, Jeremiah Byers, guard or tackle?
Tackle, and that's what's going to lead to some of our discussion here, I think.
Okay. This is the one that we had the greatest variance in, if I'm not mistaken, right? Tom, Jeremiah Byers, you had him at 5th. I have him number 9, Ira at 25.
One of these kids is doing his own thing.
I'll let you gather all the data, and then you can punch holes through all of it. So, Tom, I'll let you go ahead first and explain to Ira why Jeremiah Byers might be a little undervalued at 25.
Well, I think, you mined the answer really well, Aslan, because I think he's going to profile as a guard. And this coaching staff, Alex Atkins, Mike Norvell, are aligned in what they want out of their offensive linemen. They want large guys, but that are athletic. And nobody's more athletic on that offensive line, I think, than Jeremiah Byers. And last year, when we did the top 40, my number one offensive lineman was Dylan Gibbons, not just because he was probably Florida State's best offensive lineman, but also because they could do a whole lot with him. They love to pull and use the gap scheme, the counter runs. He was always in the middle of that kind of action, that run action. Jeremiah Byers profiles as a better athlete than Dylan Gibbons was. He looks fresher. He was outstanding in spring. He's also somebody that could play tackle if you need him to. I just think, plainly speaking, he's one of your best 5 offensive linemen. So he's going to definitely be on the field. If it's me lining up left to right, what your starting 5 is going to be, Jeremiah Byers has to be in the mix. And I just love to think about what this offense can do as it likes to get offensive linemen out on the run. Jeremiah Byers is a weapon that you can deploy with his athleticism. And he's huge too. So it's not like you're giving up one thing for the other. He can move at enormous size. So that's why I have him as number 5. I think he's going to be the most important offensive lineman this year.
I'm an ally, I think, with you, Ira. We're the same but different, possibly. I value him. I see him as a tackle because of what I see on the screen that's showing right here, what he did at UTEP, nearly 2,000 snaps. I mean, last year, nearly 900, all exclusively at right tackle. I know that there's this whole kind of undercurrent of him possibly with his athleticism and his versatility playing guard, but I feel like with the amount of experience he has at that position, that's a position that's open. That's why I have him at number 9. Maybe you can explain why you think, I don't know, is that something that, hinders his value, his impact if he's going to be at tackle as opposed to maybe being at the guard spot for you, Ira?
Well, first of all, there's no question. I mean, Tom's right. He's an incredible athlete. And if they were running an offensive line relay race on Saturdays, yes, man, he'd be my number 1 pick. I'll be honest though, man, like he worked mostly at tackle in the spring. He was on record as saying that. As you said, he played mostly tackle at his previous school. Now they talked about moving him to guard when he got to Florida State. We just haven't seen a lot of it yet. And I'll be honest, man, a lot of the times at practice, he was going up against Jared Verse, and I didn't think he was a dominant offensive lineman, going up against Jared Verse. Now, Jared Verse is an excellent defensive end. That's a tall task. But I thought, I don't know, man. To me, if you're going to be an offensive lineman in the top 5 on this football team, You got to be a guy that that guy is going to win every rep. He's going to win his reps. Those guys, they're going to have to figure out a way to scheme around him because he's locking guys down. And I just didn't see that. Physically, man, there's no question. Now, is it fair to judge him based on his first month of practice after being in a different system and starting in a new school and a new environment and new weather and all the things he had to contend with? Probably not. I think he'll look a lot better in preseason after going through this full summer they did in the spring. But I don't know, man. I just wanted to tap the brakes a little bit. And to your point, like if he ends up as a tackle, I don't know how supremely valuable he is to this offensive line, because you do have a guy who's all second team all ACC and Robert Scott. You have a guy in Bless Harris who really impressed people in the spring and was a starter at the beginning of last season before he got injured. So you've got tackles. It's not like you have to have him stepping up. And I think they've got good guards, and Dimitri Emanuel getting his 7th year. To me, all those things kind of made me push him down a little bit. Now 25 is probably too low, but I don't think he's a top 5 player based on what we've seen so far.
Ira's got Robert Scott at 8th. He's got Maurice Smith at 11th. Bless Harris at 13th. Dimitri Emanuel at 20th. Those are the offensive linemen he has ahead of Jeremiah Byers. So, I mean, those are guys that we all kind of project being in the starting lineup. Again, man, you see the number I have there, what Tom has there. I just think he's like a dancing bear, man. I feel like a couple more preseason practices and then getting ready for game week with LSU, he's just going to be fine-tuned enough that he just seemed to kind of carve out a spot there at the right tackle spot. And, for that, I think he's the most physically, athletically gifted guy they have on the offensive line. So I put him at number 9. But again, this is the Warchant top 40. These are all of our picks. So you can take a gripe with any of us. We've already kind of talked about the guys on the defensive line there, Patrick Payton, Darrell Jackson. I mean, you think about the depth they have on the interior, maybe not as much on the edges, but just incredible to think that, they've got a homegrown piece and a piece out of the portal that's going to be able to help them out there. But when we look at these guys, I mean, Keon, Coleman, Jaheim Bell, there's just so much excitement. We've seen what Patrick Payton can do. We've maybe seen from a distance what Darrell Jackson can do. I don't think a lot of guys, a lot of people out there, Tom, I don't know how many folks watching us right now watch a lot of Michigan State football, watch a lot of South Carolina football, although we should have all been well aware that, Mike Norvell is going to poach somebody from Columbia. But out of Coleman and Bell, where did you put Bell higher on your list than Coleman or vice versa?
I did. I put Bell at 8 on my list and Coleman, as you can see at the bottom, at 13. It's just Coleman factor is, I think it's the lack of knowing the offense, the familiarity with the offense. Although, as Jordan Travis pointed out in a summer interview that he did on the week of June 26th, Keon Coleman is getting used to the playbook at very quick speeds. He's a really smart player and detail-oriented. It's just this offense has so many weapons, so I went with some knowns. Even though Jaheim Bell is relatively new to the program, his skill set profiles perfectly. If you could draw up a type of player that's not a receiver or a running back, one of those hybrid type players for Mike Norvell's offense, you would draw him up to look exactly like Jaheim Bell is. So that's why I had him a little bit higher in the list than Keon Coleman. But look, this is something where, again, you've just got so many stars and so many good names that you've got to profile 1 to 15. And for me, Keon Coleman didn't make it up towards that top 10 or that top 5. But by the end of the year, I could look like a fool. Keon Coleman could catch. I mean, if you're able to rack up about 800 yards receiving with a bad quarterback and a bad offense at Michigan State, then what can you do in an offense like this, especially when you're going to draw favorable matchups with Johnny Wilson on the other side of the ball and Jaheim Bell? I think what it's going to come down to for a lot of the receivers and targets this year, if you're a tight end or a wide receiver, is what does the defensive coordinator do on the other sideline? What poison is he going to pick? Because if they pick against Johnny Wilson or Jaheim Bell or however else you want to look at it, then Keon Coleman could be Florida State's leading receiver at the end of the year. So I could see it a bunch of different ways, but it's just the lack of familiarity with the system had me knock him down a few pegs.
Ira, I like where you're at. You had Jaheim Bell 6th, Keon Coleman 7th. I had Keon Coleman 5th, Jaheim Bell 6th. You were ahead of the curve on this several years ago when you talked about the struggles of this program, especially offensively. You pointed out the fact that this wide receiving core was not probably up to snuff, to put it diplomatically. My, how things have changed. Those two guys can be absolutely just game breakers, game plan crashers for whoever they go up against. I mean, for you, Keon Coleman seems like a number 2 wide receiver if you have him that high. I just think he's going to be able to seamlessly fit in. What do you think?
Yeah, man. And I think if you look at that list, imagine if you're a fan of Florida or Miami or any of the schools on Florida State's schedule, and you think, okay, we saw that Florida State offense last year, and now they went out and got these guys. Like, I mean, it's not like they lost a ton. I mean, Pokey Wilson's a nice player, but overall, you were returning a pretty stacked offense, and you went out and got three guys who are in our top 10 right here, and then there's obviously more offensive guys in the top 5. But again, that's just remarkable because this was already a very highly productive offense. And now you got two guys who may end up being your number 2 and number 3 receivers this year. Could end up being 1 and 3 or 1 and 2. So that's it's cool, man. And a lot of times I think as fans or media, you look at other schools that when the rich get richer and you say, geez, did that school really need to get that guy? Or did Alabama need to get some all ACC running back to transfer in? But this is what Florida State did. I mean, they already had an elite offense and went out and got more guys who are going to make it even more elite. So it's pretty fun, man. It's exciting. It's definitely exciting times for FSU fans.
Jaheim Bell, we're all pretty much in the same ballpark there. Ira, again, you had him at 6th, 6th over here as well. Tom had him at 8th. Tom, can you contextualize what Jaheim Bell can be? I mean, we're kind of, having this unicorn fantasy about we can do this and we can do that. And I don't know how much of it's realistic, or maybe this is one of those things where it really is realistic that he can quite literally do everything that Mike Norvell and Chris Thompson want from him.
Well, I think part of what makes Jaheim so special in his offense is that you've got a guy like Marquiston who can play, on the line as a traditional tight end, because you've got two different types of running backs in Mike Norvell's system, two different types of tight ends. This is more of an H-back type player that can line up in the backfield as a lead blocker. We know that he outright ran the ball a ton at South Carolina, so in his repertoire, there is that capability. But this is somebody that you can line up and match up against a safety or a linebacker, and that's an automatic one-on-one win. In an offense where you want to put playmakers in one-on-one situations, it's going to be tough to cover Jaheim Bell, especially, again, with the strength of everything that Florida State has, from Johnny Wilson to Trey Benson to the legs of Jordan Travis. It's just, where are you going to decide to scheme against Jaheim Bell number 1? When is that going to happen? So if you've got somebody who can lead block, you got somebody who can line up on the end of the line or in the slot, or he could run the ball like he did at South Carolina. It's just, this is a multiple offense that likes to do different things week to week, sometimes half to half within a game. Jaheim Bell is a Swiss Army knife in a similar way that Lawrence Toafili is in the running back field. That's somebody who can catch the ball. He can line up straight up at receiver. You like having these guys that can be out there against multiple looks, against multiple defensive philosophies. And Jaheim Bell is a perfect fit for that.
There you go. Another look at it once more. The Warchant top 40. We are now inside the top 10. Jeremiah Byers at 10. Daryl Jackson 9th. Patrick Payton 8th. Keon Coleman number 7. Jaheim Bell number 6. If I'm not mistaken, gentlemen, from here on out, we will be going to individual videos to count down the top 5. Maybe you can figure it out who's going to be in there, but do you know the exact order of the top 5? You're going to want to tune in and find out. Also go to warchant.com. Corey's got a capsule on all these players as we unveil the Jeff Cameron show. We'll discuss this further. Jeff sharing his takes. Wake Up Warchant will be talking about it as well. We got plenty of recruiting news also going on over at warchant.com, Ira, so folks need to hit that subscribe button, get the bell notifications set, and head over to warchant.com, right?
Definitely, man. We've got plenty going on. And then next week, I think we're getting to start, we're getting closer and closer. We're going to have more football coverage as ACC kickoff approaches in July.
I can't wait for that. We're going to be a big happy family again, right? Big old Airbnb, all of us?
Yes.
Right.
Awesome. We're bringing, Tom's bringing the beer.
Nice. For Tom and Ira, I'm Aslan. Thanks for watching. Hit that thumbs up button on the way out. We certainly would appreciate it. Thanks for watching this edition of the Warchant Top 40.